Ryan Castle, the CEO of the Charleston Trident Association of Realtors. This is the property line. Property lines define where one piece of land starts and another begins. Charleston Trident Association of Realtors board president this year, the 2025 board president, John Grisillo. John, thanks for joining us. We can talk a little bit about your professional career, but you're also the general manager of Carolina One. So we've got a lot to dive in with you about. For those that may not know you personally, tell us a little bit about your background, because what I love about realtors is how they get into real estate, because it seems like they're usually tend to be very successful in something else, and something happened in their life where they end up transitioning in, and then they get really successful in the real estate business. Very few people jump straight out of college or high school or wherever right into real estate and get going right away. So how did you get into this? Where did your career path take you?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Pleasure to be with you today. And you're right. I'm one of those many folks that kind of got into real estate by accident a little bit, in that I was running a business, sold it, had a friend sort of invite me to become a partner with him in some basically flipping houses, spec building. We did that just in time. We ramped up just in time for the great financial crisis.
Okay, so you're kind of in that 06, 07 time frame. Did you get in early enough to make some money in it?
We started to make a little bit of money, yeah, and did a small development. And about 2008, I probably had a small development of about 12 homes getting developed and a few spec houses out there, and everything just seemed to come to a screeching halt. And at that point, I had a very close friend and great realtor, Jay Costa, who was my agent. And I called him and I said, Jay, I hate to tell you, but I got to fire you. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I got to get a license myself just to sell this stuff. And so that's how I got into it. Fairly, I think not a common story, but very similar stories out there of how people land in real estate.
Absolutely. So after that, you end up, did you go straight into the management world?
No, so I worked as an agent, and I really didn't have the intent of listing and selling. I just was trying, my vision could only see so far. I was just trying to get out of the hole that I was in. So I was primarily focused on just selling my own stuff, the properties that I had been building and developing. And then, things extended a little longer than I thought what they would, and the difficulties of the market. And so I started listing and selling about a year, and then got into conversations with the leadership and ownership of Carolina One, and they asked me if I was interested in taking on a broker role, and I did, and it's been a great ride.
That and then that evolved into the general manager role. But that leadership's always been in your thing, right? I mean, one stands out about our entire board. We have a ton of members on our board who are veterans. Mm-hmm. You went to West Point.
I did.
So talk about West Point and what you did after West Point too.
Yeah, so I grew up here and left Charleston when I was 17 and went to West Point. Then went in the Army and was an airborne ranger infantry officer, and loved that experience, loved soldiers. We deployed to Iraq. I came back, thought about a couple different things, but growing up here, family being super important to me, I felt like I wanted to work my way back to having a little more say in where I lived. So initially, I went into the corporate world for a couple of years.
So how long did you serve?
Just 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And what did you learn during that time?
It's interesting. I think sometimes with fewer people having direct experience in the military today in the country, I think sometimes there's a misunderstanding of the command and control environment. Yes, you got to have discipline. You got to have rules and regulations. But what I experienced was, once a commander sets his intent, then there's a lot of flexibility in how you get a mission done. And that to me was one of the great takeaways is, the leader has to set the intent and make clear what the mission is, and then let the people that he's working with cultivate some of the better paths to achieving the mission. And I think that's what is transferable for a lot of folks into the real estate world, is that, there's a mission focus. You couple that with taking care of people, and you have a pretty good formula for success in almost anything that you're doing.
Well, and that's for sure. Like, we have a lot of veteran realtors, veterans that are realtors stepped up to be on our board of directors. And I think it's also just the idea of leadership and giving back is ingrained in you, right?
Yeah, I would couple, what I said about mission focus and taking care of people is just really having a real heart for serving others. And I think sometimes people don't understand that as well, as that's a central core part of good military units. And it really is that you really do look out for each other. And I think that transitions very well into
So
the real
what
estate
was that
market.
driving force to you for West Point? And then obviously you had to serve after that, but
Yeah.
that driving force to say, hey, I'm going to West Point and I'm going to serve.
It was that service. I mean, it was just something that I was always drawn to. I respected it in other people, and I just felt like it was an obligation I felt to our country.
All right, switching gears a little bit. There's a lot of noise in the real estate industry. I say, like, when I got into this industry kind of in '08, everyone kept thinking change was going to happen, change was going to happen. And really, until about 17 or 18, there wasn't a lot of change that people have been talking about for the last 10 years. But it seems like since 18, and the market changes from, other than the Great Depression and, the Great Recession and the comeback from that. But as far as the structures of the industry, it didn't seem like it didn't really change until it kind of coincided right with COVID and kind of the market changing fluctuation, but then also the industry changes too at the same time. So I think a lot of people and our members feel like there's a lot of change happening very quickly. From your perspective, what's really going on in the real estate industry nationally, and what do you say to agents and your brokering charges and stuff to try to keep them focused on going forward on the mission?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're right. I mean, we've endured a really pretty intense period of change in the last couple of years. Not that we haven't had change before, but it's been different. It hadn't really been structural change our industry, but things like the impact of Hurricane Hugo and the Navy base shutdown, the great financial crisis and COVID. All of those things are changed that we had to respond.
Economic factors than the structure of the industry itself.
Right. But with this change, it's more, our house is
Whether it's the mass consolidation of brokerages that's been happening around the country, right?
Yep.
And the consolidation of real estate transaction to fewer hands, or the change in compensation structures, or all those other outside pressures.
Yeah. And what I try to do is I say, what is it that we can control, whether it's as a brokerage or as a local association, is it literally gets to be as simple as, we have to control what we can control and influence what we can influence. And so, all of that other stuff, I call it the swirl, and the swirl is always with us. And our job is to be aware of the swirl, but not to get consumed by it, and to focus on what we can control. And so for agents, it's about, focusing on who those people are that you're serving. Stay focused on them. For brokerages, it's about focusing on the agents, that we're serving and supporting. And same thing for the association, focusing on those brokerages and those agents and how do we provide the best support. All the other stuff kind of takes care of itself. It's easy to say, and it's more difficult to execute in the day-to-day. But if you can remember that every day, and you can get up every morning and say, what's the most important things I have to do today, it's manageable. And
what of that swirl does worry you, or does pique your interest more than others?
It's funny because I've gotten drawn in, I think like many of us, to, debates and conversations about where we're going with, whether it's broker compensation, or whether it's, what happened as a result of the settlement, or what's going on with consolidation of brokerages. But honestly, at the end of each day, if I look at those things, I'm like, I really don't see any of those impacting our near-term future in a significant way. You, I think, are as well versed as anybody in the country on what's going on at the association level. And I think you probably have a little bit of a different view of those things. But from my standpoint, in our market, I don't worry about a lot of that stuff.
No, I agree. I think everyone's trying to play off what the agent does and what the agent does well, right? I think what we've got to a point in this country in the evolution of real estate technology and real estate innovation where everyone realizes that you're not going to be able to replace what the agent does really well.
I 100% agree. And so all of, when you just think of the advent of technology, particularly AI right now, I think a common refrain among many people, and I tend to agree with this, is that, for the agents who figure out how to use AI effectively, they're going to become better agents.
And they're going to do more business.
Do more
right?
business
I
for
mean,
sure.
I think the common refrain is, and AI is not going to take your job as an agent. An agent with AI is going to take your job.
That's a good turn of a phrase, I think, and pretty accurate. We're at the beginning of that, but the pace of change in that particular field of technology, considering AI, it's interesting. I mean, I think that it's going to be an incredible tool for the people who decide they're going to figure out how to use it and leverage it.
On the brokerage business side, because I know you spend a lot of time on this, I think overall in the country, people feel that brokerage business margins are getting smaller. They're leaning more into ancillary services. They're trying to figure out how to make this work because y'all have done a really good job of creating structures for teams, for agents, right? And benefits and value services to agents over the last 10 years as you've come out of this. But that's all cut into the margins and cut into the brokerage operating costs. What do you see as the future of real estate brokerage?
I think the future of brokerage is strong for the brokers who are willing to innovate and, again, keep their focus on serving agents and then, as a byproduct, delivering great service to consumers. But I think you have to figure out how to generate a couple of different income streams. So you referenced the ancillary services. That seems to be the path that most people are choosing to figure out how to extend their life, and have a viable future. Consolidation certainly is on the lips of everybody in brokerage right now. In the wake of the announcements of the last, couple of weeks, it really makes for interesting conversations.
You're seeing more people are calling you about this now.
There's certainly more conversations going on among regional brokerages and local brokerages, and there's plenty of concern about the future of regional and smaller brokerages. But I think everybody has the opportunity to deliver great service, improve themselves in their own market. At the end of the day, real estate, the watchwords of, it's local, it really still is relevant. And so I think if you can deliver great service in your market and tell that story effectively, there's going to be a place for everybody.
So you did a great job just leading in for me. Zooming in on the Charleston market, as we like to do, and looking at the property lines in Charleston. What trends are you seeing? How do you describe the Charleston real estate market to agents or, other business leaders? Or I'm sure you get asked a million times a day. What do you see in the Charleston real estate market?
Well, it's funny, as we're having this conversation, you and I recently participated in a Chamber of Commerce economic forecast event. And I liked what the forecasters had to say about the near future in our market and the country broader too. But I couldn't be really more bullish about where we are in terms of our position for real estate compared to many of the other markets in the country. I always like to start with employment, and our employment situation is super strong in Charleston. I grew up here. I was away for 10 to 12 years and came back, and to see the vibrancy and the opportunity, particularly for younger professionals moving into our market now, it's incredible. It's wholesale change.
Yeah, I was away for 11 years time, and I saw a massive amount of change in that time in the same vein.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at the state level, we probably got the seventh biggest increase in jobs in the state, in the country. We're like number 7 in the state.
Yeah.
The Charleston market in the last year was number 1 in the whole country, the number 1 city in terms of job growth. We're like number 5 or so in wage growth in the last year. And so there's super good reasons for optimism in the employment market. And what we know historically is that the job market is the absolute best predictor of what's going to happen in the real estate market in the next 12 to 18 months. So I always start with that. And then we look at things like appreciation rate and supply and demand. And we see markets doing what markets do. They're pursuing equilibrium, right? And so the pace of appreciation has been moderating for the last 3 years. That's good. We've seen job employment and wage growth go up. That's good. Now we're waiting on that third leg of the three-legged bar stool to come into place, and that's rates go down. And as that is happening now, again, that sets the stage, I think, for a really strong expectation of market growth, both in prices and units in the year ahead. The rate thing has been the big thing that we're waiting on, and that seems to be coming into focus. That if we can just get consistently around 6%, maybe high fives, it's going to unlock, we think, a couple thousand more transactions. So last 3 years, we've been bumping around in the 16, 17,000 home sales a year. And we think if we get to 6%, not even really necessarily high fives, but just 6% and stay there for a while, it'll unlock about 2,000 more transactions in the next year. And so we go to 18,000 home sales. That's
also big on taking that 24,000 number and those 220
Yep.
plus thousand years on each side of that from 2020, 2021, and 2022, and making sure you take those home sales and spread them out over the next couple years,
Yeah,
right?
we pulled
We're
ahead.
getting at the tail end of that. I think in some markets around the country, it probably was a longer window of it, but we did what I say is borrow home buyers
For sure.
in
Absolutely.
2021 that would have been 2025 home buyers.
That's for sure. But the other dynamic at play is, do have pent up demand over the last 3 years or so now too. So it's kind of funny. You got the coil sort of getting loosened on one end and it's tightening up on the other end. But, so you've got some pent up demand with people having all the life changes over the last 3 years and they wanted to move, but they just couldn't pull the trigger because they were either felt homebound by their great rate that they had, or they're just holding off a little longer for the better rate to come. And again, so we're getting to the point where I think we're going to uncoil a lot of that pent up demand. And the last thing I would just say about our current situation, it's just, demographics play a huge role in what's going on in the real estate market. And the demographics for us are super strong. You got 42 people moving here a day. You've got a large percentage of those people, again, being sort of in the sweet spot of the millennial generation, that 34 to 38 age band, where a lot of those people are now first-time home buyers if they're not move-up buyers. And so that dynamic, again, very different. Sometimes people still have that sort of outdated mindset of Charleston being largely a retirement market, and that's not at all the case.
Not at all. And, I look at that age band really going to be interesting what happens to them over the next 10 to 15 years. Because one thing I don't think gets talked enough about the industry is the coming transfer of wealth from the baby boomers, right, to the millennial generation, and how that may change their marketplace and their ability to move up and do other things in the marketplace when that happens over the next 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, there's no doubt that transfer of wealth is going to be unlike anything we've seen before, really. And so...
And it started a little bit. COVID kind of was in my market, I saw at that time a little bit of that happening, right? That 40 to 45 year old, 40 to 50 year old demographic that came in with more money from family money, than they've ever seen.
Yep. And so the thing that we didn't talk about specifically, though, in this is just the first-time home buyer attainability, affordability issue, which is certainly a challenge. But again, the only thing on the near horizon that sort of helps with that is time for those wages to continue to increase at a higher rate than the CPI, time for the moderating prices of homes to allow their wages to sort of catch up. And now let's get the rate thing down. And you start to see a little bit, we're seeing now regionally in the Southeast, we're seeing the best improvement in affordability among all the regions in the country, but it's a tough one.
But we got a problem. We saw from the economic forecast, right, a decrease coming potentially in the number of homes being built.
Yeah.
And I actually see that. It makes a lot of sense the way he's framed that. Is that we are in knowing what you and I know about some of these large scale developments that have been propped up, because a lot of agents have done a lot of great business over the last several years on new home construction. But I think that over time, we're going to see that the number of new homes built shrink just from the availability of land. A lot of these larger developments that were approved post-recession to jumpstart the economy are getting built out and ending their life of new homes. Less land availability for entitlement, longer time periods for entitlement for that land. So I think you're going to start seeing less available things to be built over time. Except for maybe further out in the hinterlands as you get into the Ridgeville and the Moncks Corner area and that kind of belt. So I think that's an interesting thing to be thinking about on affordability side.
There's no question, and it's part and parcel of I know what you believe very strongly, and I do too, that, part of our mission is advocacy for the real estate community and for homeowners and property rights. And so trying to figure
And
out.
housing attainability and opportunities.
Absolutely. That's, I was kind of starting with that, in that, so how do we, help tackle what seems to be intractable problems in terms of getting the right supply and demand mix, right? And so, in the absence of very proactive efforts by folks like you and, Michael Ramsey, who we just brought in as a government advocacy guy here, in the absence of those efforts, I mean, time is the only solution. And so what we have to do is figure out what can we do to move the needle. And
yeah, and that needle's going to take a long time to come to fruition
Yep.
too. I remember now, like seeing things that are now starting to break ground that I was talking about 10, 12 years ago, as things, you got Long Savannah breaking ground over in West Ashley, and yeah, Point Hope is kind of seems to be moving along up on the Kanawha Peninsula. I mean, these were long planned projects.
Oh, for sure. And you look at that corridor, in particular, that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but, you go down Clements Ferry, and that's soon to be, West Mount Pleasant, with just a number of increases. And so we've got to have those efforts. We've got to support those efforts. And we also have to, be mindful of how do we strike that balance with quality.
I mean, that plays into the importance of like making sure we have money available for green space and open space acquisitions going forward, as that money is about to run out, and also for transportation improvements. I mean, all of that goes hand in hand with all of this, because we got to make sure we keep Charleston a livable place to live and a place people want to live, and keep the quality of life strong. I think I'm I'm a firm believer that Charleston is better today than the Charleston I grew up in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think you probably are a firm believer that Charleston's a better place today than the Charleston you grew up in.
Yeah, in many ways.
I won't think you say what decade that was, but
It's easy. It is certainly easy for me to wax nostalgic about having a great time growing up in Charleston. But I would say that we are headed in a positive direction, and the votes are in. So many people wanting to come here. They're not coming here because we don't have great.
But there's more opportunities here
for sure
too. And that's the thing I think people remember. I remember growing up in Somerville and having to leave Somerville to go do everything.
Yep.
And you don't have to do that anymore. Same with Mount Pleasant, same with West Ashley, right? And I think that's a strong case. I know you lived Johns Island. I lived on Johns Island early in my professional career, and you left Johns Island to do anything.
Right. And that, certainly you see a lot of growth there. So it's, all of this connects to good reasons to get involved in the association, right? There's so many opportunities for us to contribute to our community, and it goes beyond just narrowly supporting property rights and, narrowly defined real estate interest. There's so many things that are involved in that, like you referenced infrastructure, taxation. What are we doing transportation wise is another, key part of infrastructure. So many different things that really, to be an effective realtor, I think the more you understand those issues, we can't have a mastery of all of them, but the more exposure you get to those things, the better equipped you are to really serve your client.
But also, I think what the association does that members don't quite understand is, I get that question all the time. Well, what do you do all day long, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of those things is we get very granular on things that impact their business, mm-hmm. right? We've been working with the town of Mount Pleasant strongly about tree permits, and people are like, tree permits. I'm like, well, it's about due diligence periods and whether people can get the permission to cut down a tree if they want to put it in a swimming pool or want to renovate their house in the middle of due diligence, right? They need some answers and some finality on that and some certainty to make investments that they're making. And so those are the granular ways we get involved. We've got members of ours who are active in short-term rentals. So whether it's us working on Folly Beach on that or Isle of Palms, wherever, right? I think that people forget about the granularity that we get involved in to help their everyday, beyond just the bigger picture of growth and infrastructure and how we support all that, from the standpoint of HOAs and other things, to work on everyday issues, or real estate commission directives, and making sure our members are compliant with the law from the real estate commission side.
Yeah, really, it really is seemingly a never-ending list of things to monitor, to figure out what to take action on, what to prioritize. I think you do a wonderful job of staying abreast of, again, the granular details of most of those things, if not all of them. And so, whether we're talking one day about the tree ordinance, or the next day about the widening of Dorchester Road, or the next day about short-term zoning, short-term rental situations in North Charleston, there's so many things that we as an association have an opportunity to positively impact, but we need people to be involved to do that.
Yeah, because it's all comes from feedback from our members,
Yeah.
right? Like all the time, I'm hearing from members, well, this is really causing my buyers a problem or my sellers a problem, and that's how we find out about things,
Yeah,
right?
for sure. The HOA reform is a great idea.
It's driven by our members, right? It's driven by the issues that our members encounter on an everyday basis,
Yes.
whether it's legal issues, whether it's government issues, whether it's regulatory issues.
For sure. I mean, I think, again, we've had great experiences this year of people, agents, members raising concerns about issues, generating a little bit of momentum and making good things happen. You got the recent HOA reform effort going on, that could be significant to bring more clarity to the transaction if we can clarify fees for all parties involved in the transaction. And so just a lot of those types of opportunities to pursue.
All right. So this year was also speaking. Let's talk a little about the association. This year was obviously a bigger change. I'm at the table. And for those that don't know, I started April 21st as the CEO of the Association of Realtors, having been here from 2008 to 2014 as the Government Affairs Director and left for 11 years in my sabbatical up in Massachusetts as the CEO at the Cape Cod and Island Association of Realtors up there. But now back here, can you talk about leading a board through change and the association in general that y'all have gone through?
Yeah, it's been a very good transition. I'll just go back to the search effort. When Will Riley, who provided many years of outstanding leadership and service to the association, let us know that he was going to retire, he set the stage for a very orderly transition to occur. Our search committee, I think, conducted a very effective search. We had, as you can imagine, great interest from across the country. And Ryan, we were so thrilled to have you come back to the association after your hiatus. And it's really been, you hit the ground running for sure. And a lot of good things have happened this year. So for this year, for me, to think about, the direction of the association, it really was first and foremost, let's get the right person in the right seat leading the association. I'm 100% confident and convinced that we've done that. And so that sets the stage for the rest of the year. As you have sort of worked through the team and staffing and deciding what priorities that were important to you, we sort of have collaborated on that. And I think it's, again, we've set a good stage for many years to come because I think you got more clear about priorities together. I think we just have worked well together and excited about the future. I couldn't be more excited about the future. I think personally, what I appreciate is we've had a really good interest on or emphasis on increasing professionalism and an emphasis on leading advocacy for the real estate community through serving agents better. And it's been a good ride, and it's hard to believe that it's already coming to a conclusion. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing is like you're going to be exiting the year as president. You'll serve another year as immediate past president, but then we probably won't hear from you again. No, but I mean, as a significant brokerage leader in our marketplace, we still want to make sure you're engaged in the association moving forward. I know you will be, but from that standpoint, in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, what do you think the association should be doing to best serve your agents and your brokerage and by and large the rest of the industry? Because I mean, while you're moving out of leadership, you should still have significant opinions to help guide us in the future.
Yeah, I'm very confident the direction that you're charting and the folks who are taking the helm in the next couple of years, Stephen and Sarah, that we're going to have the right direction. And it really is about making the association more relevant. This is something I think I've heard you say before, making the association more relevant in the weekly life of the agent. And I think we're doing that. I think we're seeing that now. But just, we got a little indication with the number of applicants for the board of directors. I think we had a record number of people apply with interest. And so drawing agents a little bit more into the orbit of the association and understanding what the value is. In my thought process, what our mission really recently has been to increase the perceived value of the association. I feel like the value is always there, but I don't think it's been fully appreciated because we might not have communicated it as consistently in as many different ways as we needed to agents. I see that changing a lot through the course of this year. I think if we continue on that path, we're going to continue to have, again, one of the best associations in the country.
And be nimble to, I think, respond to agents' needs. And, not only respond, but be more proactive, be ahead of where there's no one, they saying they need this should be, oh, wow, it already exists for me.
Yeah.
And rather than responsive, we got to be much more proactive moving forward. Like you are at brokerage, by the time the agents tell you that you need a program at your brokerage, you're probably like, oh, shoot, I'm behind now.
Well, it's funny that you put it that way because one of the parallels that we talk about fairly frequently is that, the brokerage, what we do for our agents perfectly matches up with the agents do for their consumers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we say to agents about the consumer is if they called you, with a question or a need, we might have failed because we should have, proactively anticipated most of those things. And so it's the same way for the brokerage to the agent. And I think you could make that extension as you are from the association to its members.
Here on the property line, we like to leave members with one line takeaway, as they try to draw that line away. What do you say to those who may not pay much attention to the association and wonder why should they take the time to get involved? Because like I say, well, why would you not? This is your association. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people don't see that. What's your one line to people on why to get involved?
It's interesting. In this part of the country, we love college football, right? And Dabo Sweeney was talking about, young athletes a few months ago, and he was saying, if you break it down, the kids in our program, 3% of the time they're with us is when they're in a game situation. 97% of the time that we have them, it's a non-game situation. So we spend 97% of our time in preparation, basically 3% in execution. I think that parallels what we do in this business. I think we spend so much time, whether it's social media or thinking about different issues, and so little time directly interacting with clients, that we have to recognize that which we do every day matters way more than what we do once in a while. And what we do once in a while is really interact directly with a client. What we do every day is where the opportunity is, and that's where the opportunity is to get involved with the association. You can become a better agent. You can become more professional through reaching out to the association and just picking a spot to get involved. Whether it's the legislative committee or a particular committee in there with the candidate screening efforts we have going on, or the global chapter or roof, but just getting involved somewhere, you're going to start to surround yourself with people who are thinking about issues that you're going to be able to learn from, and you're going to be able to share good insight with them. And it really makes a difference in a person's career and the value, I think, that we're able to give others, and certainly what we receive through our involvement. And so, that which we do once in a while doesn't matter nearly as much as what we do every day. And so if every day we come up with an idea of how we can get involved and serve the community, and you can do that best, I think, through the association, then you're on the right path.
Well, that was much longer than one line.
Yeah.
But
what you do every day.
I think your folks would tell you that brevity is probably your strongest suit at times when we give you the microphone. What day?
What you do every day matters more than what you do once in a while. We'll go with that.
All right. John, thanks so much for taking the time to share your wisdom and your thoughts, because you've had such a very vast experience to be able to add to the conversation here. We appreciate it.
Ryan, thank you. Super excited to be here with you and have you here, and look forward to all the good things to come.
And thank you for your service to our country. Thank you for all our members who have varied service as veterans to our country, and especially a lot of our board who are veterans as well. That is something that like you said, becoming much more or less commonplace
Mhm.
of people with that experience in the world. And we would not have this country and the ability to freely transact property and have that property ownership without that service that all of you guys provided for our country.
It's my pleasure and honor to have had a small opportunity to serve, and I know all the other veterans that are involved in the association feel the same way.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.